Hello, everyone, and welcome. How do you assess or decide the degree of morality? Well, morality has to do with the respect you give to another person or another species. One should respect the other person as much as he respects himself. There is no morality higher than this. The day one puts oneself above another, he becomes immoral. Morality is only the thought, feeling, or action which attenuates or reduces the ego and leads one on to truth. While love is moral, marriage without love is immoral. Actions that result in higher freedom, higher evolution, are more moral than the actions that produce the opposite. Ownership over people is the worst kind of immorality. People are often confused about certain acts, whether they are moral or not. Well, here is a guide to decide or judge which is the right thing to do when you do not know it for sure. Evolution may be categorized into four levels or quadrants of static value patterns. 1. Inorganic. 2. Biological. 3. Social. And 4. Intellectual, representing the lower level to the higher level in that order. Based on where one act falls in what level or what quadrant, we can decide the degree of morality. If two actions fall within the same static value pattern, then the pattern with dynamic content or quality will supersede the static value pattern. Degree of morality, thus, can be assessed by the intentions behind the actions as to whether they are biologically or socially or intellectually motivated. This may be easily understood by the following examples that deal with the most important issues of the present times. Germ and patient. It is moral to kill a germ, which is biological, and save a patient, which is intellectual. Second one, war and capital punishment. A primitive, isolated village threatened by thieves, brigands, has a moral right and obligation to kill them in self-defense, as a village is a higher form of evolution. When the United States drafted troops for the Civil War, everyone knew that innocent people would be killed. The North could have permitted the slave states to become independent and saved thousands of lives. But an evolutionary morality argues that the North was right in pursuing that war because a nation is a higher form of evolution than a man's body. And the principle of human fairness is an even higher form of the nation. In case of a criminal, If an established social structure is not seriously threatened by him, then an evolutionary morality would argue that there is no moral justification for killing him. Criminal is not just a biological organism. He is a source of thought, collection of ideas, and these ideas take moral precedence over a society. The next one, abortion. It is moral for an individual or society to prevent the creation of a human life when it is only in the state of organic matter. However, it would be immoral to kill a developing human being when it has reached a state of sentience or mind. A rape victim has a strong moral right to abortion as the fetus is a direct result of a biologically motivated action. The biological level is lower than the social level. Therefore, it is immoral for the social level to allow the biological level, which is the act of rape, to overcome it, especially when it has the ability to physically return the girl to the status quo prior to the biological act. If the fetus were to develop sentience, it would then be immoral for an abortion to take place, as the fetus would then be part of the intellectual level and as such a higher form of evolution than society. The next one, blasphemy. Religious codices are part of a higher order of intellectual reasoning. It would be immoral for those to be distracted by biological or social forces. However, anti-religious sentiment based on an intellectual argument, such as Galileo, would not be blasphemous. This is a good dynamic quality over static patterns, which can contribute to an advancement, expansion, and sophistication of man's concept of religion. Contraception. This is moral, as contraception is essentially a method of intellect guiding and controlling biology. Assisted suicide and euthanasia. In cases of PVS, which is permanent vegetative syndrome, the act of euthanasia by society or law is moral, as this is merely the cause of society or intellect overcoming biology, as a human in a PVS state is essentially biological in nature. However, in cases where an individual is terminally ill and suffering, yet mentally alert, assisted suicide is immoral, as for society or law to cause the termination of an intellect is immoral, despite the fact that this may use society's resources. The above is true unless the individual himself decides on suicide. For if this is the only possible method of the intellect overcoming the strains put on it by the biological forces of his own body, this then becomes a moral case of intellect dominating biology. theft and taxation. It is moral for a society to impose taxes on its constituent individuals' material resources for the purpose of its own survival, as a society is a higher form of evolution than an individual. It is immoral for an individual to steal from the state for his own purposes, unless his purposes are clearly for a higher intellectual order than those of the society. However, it is moral for an individual to steal from society in order to survive, for example, for food, as his actions keep an intellect alive, and intellect is a greater value than society. The exception to this would be where the society could not withstand the theft. Freedom of speech and association. Freedom of speech or individual action of an intellectual or idealistic nature must be allowed to act contrary to the wishes of society, as these actions are naturally of a higher order than society. However, individuals' action motivated by biological nature, such as riots, theft and murder, etc., are inferior to society and must be oppressed by it. Equality and affirmative action. U.S. Racial Affirmative Act appears to be incorrect in its assumption that equality is synonymous with sameness, in that it ignores the little publicized scientific, historical, and social facts that some racial groups are on average genetically different in abilities to others, and therefore are on average more suitable for certain types of employment. So, in this respect, it is moral to put more police force to tackle the crime in certain areas, unless the police in the process victimize innocent individuals on the basis of this societal statistical perception. Racism is immoral when it results from an individual's biological urge of tribalism, us versus them mentality, to infringe the rights of freedom, equality, and bodily integrity, as this is a biological pattern of values attacking the intellectual patterns of value. You can thus see and judge the degree of morality as to whether an act is biologically or socially or intellectually motivated. Thank you.